Welcome everyone to this webinar for Noronex Limited, ASX code NRX. Shortly, I'll introduce Chief Geologist Bruce Hooper, who will provide an update on the company's upcoming 4,000 metre drill program focused on the high priority copper exploration targets at its 100% owned Humpback Project on the Kalahari copper belt in Namibia. Following the presentation, attendees will have the opportunity to ask questions directly to Bruce during a live Q&A session. So as the presentation is occurring, think about what questions you would like asked and submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and I will put them to Bruce during the Q&A session. I would also like to point out that this presentation has this morning been lodged with the ASX, so you can read it there at your leisure. For those shareholders watching today, I'd like to remind you that for eligible shareholders, a non-renounceable entitlement offer has been announced and is open until the close of business at 5 p.m. Western Standard Time on Monday, the 31st of July, 2023. So please check out the ASX filings and talk to the company if you'd like to take up that offer. Okay, let's get started. I'd now like to introduce Noronex Limited Chief Geologist Bruce Hooper.
Good morning.
Bruce, if we just turn your camera on. Yep, there we go. Over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us to hear about the upcoming program that we've got in Namibia. So the next slide, please, and through to the introduction. So Noronex are focused on Namibia and copper at the moment. We've got a JORC compliant resource of about 10 million tonnes at 1.3% copper, a significant holding of tenements across the Kalahari copper belt in Namibia, and we're about to start on a 4,000 metre drill program on our newly granted 100% owned exploration tenements going out towards the Botswana border. The company is fully funded for this program, having completed a recent placement and an underwritten entitlement issue. And so we're very keen to get going. Next slide, please. We've got a tight capital structure, a quality register, and a very attractive enterprise value, unfortunately. A good group of people who've been fantastic in providing support and keeping us drilling and exploring over the last couple of years in Namibia with some great success. Next slide, please. The Kalahari copper belt has really taken off. It's obviously been known for many years, but really over the last 2 years or so, it's become a significant producer. The Khoemacau deposit produces about 60,000 tonnes of contained copper a year with a 20-year mine life, and they're looking at the moment of expanding that to 130,000 tonnes per year. Sandfire Resources, who've just commenced production out of the Mateo deposit, will be ramping up to 30,000 tonnes of copper this year, giving sort of 90,000 tonnes out of this belt, and looking to increase up to 50,000 tonnes over the coming years. And there's a photo there of where they are at the moment as production starts in an open pit. Next slide, please. At a great time for copper. Copper's usage is growing significantly, and we haven't got enough new mines to fill that demand. Interesting, the last major discoveries have been the Kamoa and Kamoa-Kakula discoveries in the Central African copper belt in the Congo, some 120 years after production and exploration has started there. The biggest and the best has been found. It's been quickly brought into production in the Congo, and it's continuing to expand. Sandfire, having acquired the Mateo deposit from Mod Resources, have got that into production just 7 years from the time it was first discovered. So this belt can quickly fill that gap for new copper projects. Next slide, please. So we've got a major holding across the Namibian belt there. You can see the Central African copper belt, which has Kamoa-Kakula, 1.7 billion tons at 2.5% copper now. And we're hoping to turn the Kalahari copper belt into what we believe it can be as the new Central African copper belt. You can see on the eastern end there in Botswana as the new mines opening up. Kuprick now have 7 million tons of copper defined, and that system continues across the border into Namibia. We're going to be drilling close to the border there on our new tenement package, which we own 100%. We'll follow up some previous intercepts at Fiesta, which I'll run you through, and then out to the Blowhole prospect to look at some large potential new discoveries. In Witvlei, we have a resource. We're adding to that. We've had a new discovery at Dalheim in the last couple of years, or last year, and those are looking encouraging to increase that resource. At Snowball, we're looking for the Kamoa-Kakula equivalent, large project with that sort of new understanding that's come, finding that deposit just outside the basin on the basement high, and a similar setting in the Kalahari copper belt. Next slide, please. So these are our tenements in white, spread across Namibia, covering the same geological stratigraphy shown in the airborne magnetics there, over into Botswana, over to the Zone 5 Kuprick deposit, which is 168 million tons at over 2% copper, and Mateo open pit, 50 million tons at 0.9% copper. So the area I'll talk about first is our Humpback Project. Those are the areas out to the east on towards the Botswana border. And then we'll come back and talk a little bit about Witvlei and Snowball. Next slide, please. So these are tenements that we managed to pick up last year. Namibia had a moratorium. As the moratorium was lifted, we were in country and able to put in a number of applications to cover a large part of this northern belt, which we consider the most prospective part of the Kalahari copper belt. Fortuitously, it covered a project called Fiesta, where the number of previous drilling had been occurring, and we'll be going back in there to follow up some encouraging hits that they had there. And then out to the border area at Blowhole, where we see continuity from Botswana and a number of exciting new targets. In the dotted red and white, there are some new exploration tenements our applications that we're still waiting to be granted. The northern one there, we've completed an environmental clearance, and I'm hoping that'll be granted shortly. And the area just to the south there with sort of T4 and T10 in the middle, a new area we pegged just a week or two ago that became available. And that'll take us about a year to get granted and do full environmental clearance and get landowner permission to get on the ground. But very excited to have picked up some encouraging domal structures with limited previous drilling, having intersected some good copper numbers there. So that's something we can move forward to in the future. Next slide, please. So we're going to start at Fiesta. The rig's already moving out to site at the moment, and we're hoping to be drilling towards the end of the week or early next week. It was previously explored by Kuprick, who own the Zone 5 deposit, and they drilled 120 holes. and found a significant system that's over 5 kilometers long, and got a number of encouraging intercepts on that. We'll be drilling in and around some of those, like 8 meters at 2.5% copper, with very good silver here as well. 13 meters at 1.4. We've been doing a few orientation soil surveys at the moment. If we can get geochemistry to work under this sort of 70 meters of cover that we've got here, then that'll be a great tool going forward as we go further out under the Kalahari sands. Though the Kalahari sands, we never see deeper than 100 meters over that whole distance of 700 kilometers from Mateo all the way through to our Witvlei project. So we're going to drill a few targets along strike, looking for that sort of blowout, extra size, large structural target, and a few more regional targets in this copper-rich area, looking for the big deposit. Next slide, please. You can see here that we've reinterpreted the previous drilling, the geophysics, and come up with a new understanding of where we think the mineralization is hosted and the potential zones that can host a large deposit. Mineralization is developed on a contact between an oxidized red sandstone and a black reduced shale, and it's in that redox front that the copper is precipitated. So we're going to be targeting that. You can target that based on magnetics, both airborne and ground magnetics, and we're looking where those traps have occurred, where the fluids coming with copper-rich fluids hit the reductant, precipitate out, and form a large deposit, similar to the Kamoa-Kakula in the Congo and more the Cupric-Comacao deposit in Botswana. So we've got 10 holes planned to start with, a few of them in that central high-grade area where previous drilling, and there's really only been 3 holes over a 500-meter zone there, and all were anomalous. We'll drill a few more holes into that to understand that, and then test along strike from there. And next slide, please. After that, we're going to move out to the Botswana border, Blowhole area, out along the boundary fence is the access route. And there we have a number of targets, again on that same contact zone, looking for the domal structural trap zone along strike from intersected copper in Botswana. And Progr have had a little bit of success and a few intercepts at their Ngami and Thule prospects. And this contact, it continues into Namibia, and we feel we've got a structural trap zone at the western end of that anticlinal closure, and we'll be drilling through about 70 meters of cover from water bores that have been drilled there recently. It appears that there's about 70 meters of Kalahari sand, so we should easily be able to get through that with RC drilling, target that contact based on aeromagnetics, and look for those large copper trap sites. We'll drill sort of between 6 to 10 holes, depending on the success of getting through into that contact zone during this program. And of course, with success, we'll continue on and drill some more. Next slide, please. So flipping back to Witvlei, which is where we started this a couple of years ago, 10 million tons at 1.3% copper. It's been known about for a while, open pittable, subcropping area with very good infrastructure. That's a main bitumen road that runs through to Botswana that goes between these deposits. There are similar style of mineralization from that in in Botswana at the Mateo deposits, chalcocite, which makes a very high grade concentrate. And at Dalheim, we intercepted, which was previously undrilled, we intercepted 27 meters at 1.6% copper in the first program. And we've continued to follow that up with some quite decent broad hits, including ones just a few months ago. And within that, there's a number of narrow, high-grade zones, such as 6 meters at 2.9 and 4 at 3.3, which make up those intercepts. Very similar, again, to a lot of the mineralization in the Central African Copper Belt. So this Witvlei zone will continue to do more work, will continue to build on that 10 million tons to try and get that into an economic deposit. Next slide, please. Our last hole we drilled earlier this year was the first diamond hole that we've drilled into it. That's given us a significant understanding of what we've got there. As I say, it's got a number of thin zones that all bulk up into a significant thickness. We got 135 meters at 0.3, including sort of 14 meters at 1.1, and some shallow mineralization near surface. We're better understanding this system and the mineralization there, and we've got targets along strike from that. And you can see in the dotted black line there, that's how we're now interpreting that contact zone where we hope we can find more copper. Again, this is shallow, close to surface, open pittable material. And you can see in the core photos there some good grades in these shale horizons. Next slide, please. The Snowball joint venture we've got into after we started work in Witvlei. This is the Kamoa lookalike. This is the basement high on the edge of this northern edge of the basin, where the fluids are forced out of the basin, trapped on a reductant onto the basement high. And this area had been undrilled prior to us doing the joint venture. We've been doing sort of 5 kilometer space drilling on a number of key targets, key structural zones and domes. And, you know, we still see that there's potential to find the big one on here. We're doing some more work on an area called Sashenvold on our Snowball tail tenement there. And I'm on my way out to Namibia in a couple of days now. And one of the things we'll do some further work on there and looking at building that up into drill targets over the next few months. Next slide, please. So we're busy. We're out there. It's fantastic to have this new funding come through with great support to get us into the Humpback area. The first time we've been able to work on our 100% owned tenements. And we're looking to find the big one here. We know we're in a well mineralized copper zone. There are previous intercepts of 8 meters at 2.5 and 9 meters at 1.8 with good silver. And so we'll be in there looking to find those major discoveries as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So that's a quick summary, quick run through on what we're up to. We're excited to be there. We're excited to have the drill rig on site at the moment, and happy to take any questions that we've got.
Thanks, Bruce. A great presentation, not just on Noronex and the work that's being done, but you know, your overview of the copper market, I think, was very insightful as well. It's always interesting when we talk to people running companies or exploration programs. They very rarely talk about themselves, but I do have probably more of a statement that's been made by someone watching, which is just referring back to your own background, being the Chief Exploration and Business Development Officer at Sandfire Resources, which, as most people should know, is the biggest copper company listed on the ASX at present. What drove you to leave what could arguably a cushy job at a big company and come back down the curve a little bit to an exploration company that's back on the rigs and working hard at ground level? What was the attraction, and how are you feeling now you're here?
Thanks. Yeah, I had a great 9 years at Sandfire. We had a lot of success there. I guess one of them was the acquisition of Julian Hanna's discovery of Mod Resources there in Botswana. And that really excited me about this belt. This is a belt I've worked in 25 years ago with Straits Resources in Namibia around these Witvlei deposits. So yeah, look, the chance to unlock the Kalahari copper belt, to find the major new belt, is a key part of it. Really feel that this is one of the undeveloped areas of the world where, you know, you can open copper mines, and there's shallow cover over hundreds of kilometers that's masked a significant discovery. And it's been good to join a good group of people who've allowed us to take that opportunity and get the drill rig out, and keep the drill rig turning, exploring and drilling for copper with Noronex. So the exciting times in my life have always been the discoveries and the developments of projects and deposits. And, you know, let's keep every fingers crossed, but that's what we're looking for here to do again.
Are you surprised that land such as this in a belt that is growing in reputation was available?
Yes. It's part and parcel of timing. Everything's always about timing, I guess. We were lucky on the moratorium. We were lucky to have some good people in country, including Ivor Kamisi, who he used to work with the ministry, and our exploration manager, Rianne Kazandunga. And so sort of through timing the right people and understanding the belt, we've managed to get in and claim this 100% new tenements, which is fantastic. The joint venture on Snowball was an interesting one, with a group of Namibian and Australian geologists and geophysicists who really understand these systems, and they claim this ground, and we're open to a joint venture to allow us to go and explore. So, you know, that and James Thompson, our executive director, who picked up these outcropping known Witvlei deposits to build off, we've managed to pick up a substantial, an excellent portfolio for a very reasonable base.
And in terms of infrastructure and access, there's a question here around what is that like? And for most people who certainly haven't been to Botswana and Namibia wouldn't realise how well endowed it is as mining jurisdictions for infrastructure. But what's the land like and access like to get to these projects?
Yeah, so Namibia is a mining country. It's been a mining country ever since independence. You know, it's obviously been a major uranium producer. It's had some of the historical copper mines like Tsumeb over many generations. So the country understands it. It's got a very small population, but a very good infrastructure. So Witvlei, for instance, is an hour and 10 minutes from the international airport, along a bitumen road, good power infrastructure. The port at Walvis Bay is where the Botswana copper goes out. So, you know, low population density, flat, environmentally benign area to actually dig, to have an open pit and the tailings facilities. So yeah, it's a great place to open a mine, and quite different to many parts of the world where we're looking for copper.
And I'll pun intended, come back to the drilling program, drill down a bit further if you like. How is this current drilling campaign different to what you've done previously? And what have you learned previously which guides you going forward?
Yeah, look, I mean, we've had a lot of success in the previous programs. Obviously, discovering Dalheim was an important one. There we were using soils and RC drilling. We've gone now and done a bit more diamond drilling, and all of that sort of helped us understanding how best to drill through this covered sand sequence, and also about the geology. So now that we're moving into an area where we know there's copper at Fiesta, and then out to the Botswana border, we're sort of building on what we've known and what we've done, and going into big new untested areas, and that's a pretty exciting stage to be at the moment. So we're looking forward to doing that.
Certainly not wanting you to put an exploration target or guidance on any of the work being done. It's obviously a bit early for that, but there's a question here in terms of what's an economic resource look like? What in your mind, you know, in a fantastic environment, you know, moving forward, if the results come as you hope, what does economic look like in terms of size of deposit?
Well, so obviously in Sandfire, we were very impressed by the discovery at Mateo, which was sort of 30 million tons at 1% copper when Sandfire acquired Mod for 170 million or so Aussie. That's a good start. The real value's now been added that it's going to be 50 million tons, and the A4 deposit will feed in there and get a 50,000 ton. We'd love to be able to do that, but the potential's up there with Zone 5. That's 200 million tons at 2% copper, and there's nothing. These systems are very similar, sedimentary copper systems here to the Congo and those even bigger deposits. So you know, we'd love to find the next Mateo, but we're also keeping our eyes open for something bigger.
And in terms, there's a good question here in terms of attracting partners. Obviously, Mod was taken out in Botswana, and there's a lot of interest both from Australian and Canadian companies in this part of the world. How closely do you think potential partners are watching what you're up to, both given your own experience, but also the land holding that the company has?
Yeah, look, you never know until it happens, I guess. But you know, certainly we talk to many people in the district and the belt, and hopefully I'm not the only one out there who sees the potential for this new belt, really. So now we'll have to see what happens on that, and you know, hopefully we'll drill it ourselves in 100% owned tenements within the next program.
There is a very direct question here, and we always like putting the direct questions to management, so I will ask it as directly as it's been asked. In terms of the non-renounceable offer that is open at the moment, the non-renounceable entitlement offer, you've obviously got rights under that offer. Will you be taking them up?
Oh, yeah, I already have. Yes. Okay, the market capitalization for what we've got is just a fantastic bargain at the moment, I guess. So, yes.
Well, on that note, we might finish up with questions. We don't have any more that have come through. There's certainly were a number there that we put to you, and you answered them beautifully. So appreciate that. Now, that does bring to a close today's webinar for Noronex Limited. I'd like to thank everyone for your time to tune in to listen to the presentation from Bruce, and I'd like to thank Bruce for giving such an insightful presentation on a key industry thematic. As you can see on the screen, contact details for the company are on the screen, and should you like to follow up with Bruce or the other representatives of the company, please do so using those contact details. So Bruce, thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for watching, and have a great rest of the day.